Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to everybody to this meeting on female empowerment from the On House in Casa Encendida. My name is Ángel Cano, and I'm the director of the association Despierta, and it's a pleasure to be with all of you this year. The Mobile Film Festival that is celebrated by a group of people that live in Paris and whose communication director is with us today, has stressed female empowerment, and we have wanted to be the loudspeaker of this festival in our country due to the importance of this topic and because of all the connections that it has with everything has to do with climatic change and environment. As you know, in Despierta, what we do is to open the eyes to the people on the different alternatives that exist to reduce our impact on nature and to create also among all of us a better society. The first person that I actually want to introduce is Christina Kwauk. Christina is the director of the project of monitoring and evaluation of education on climatic change. She's social scientist with a focus, an interdisciplinary focus on climatic action and expert in the education of girls in developing countries. And abilities of the 21st century and empowerment of youth. Welcome, Christina. Thank you so much for being with us. You're in Washington, D.C. You have survived the hurricane of Trump and all his friends. So it's even more important that you're here. So if you activate the microphone, you can say hello to the people that is here. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here today. It's a pleasure to join you all. And yes, indeed, we did survive the hurricane of Trump. It was a long 4 years, but I'm looking forward to having the discussion today and to seeing the 20 videos.
Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure for you to be with us. The next inviter person is Mónica Chao, who's a good friend who has developed her professional career in great big companies like Mafra, Pricewaterhouse, or NH Hotels, setting in motion projects that are pioneering. They are very much ahead of their new trends with international prices. And one of her latest initiatives has been very successful. It's called Women Action Sustainability, and is an organization of managing women, of which he's his director. And it's a great pleasure to come with you today. Thank you so much, Angel. The honor is mine. Actually, all the events in La Casa Encendida are very interesting, and they actually anticipate topics that anticipates the people that are listening. I loved the Festival Mobile last year. I'm very happy to be with all these women, and I see women that I already know in this debate. And so I want to thank you, Angel, for being with us and for inviting all of us. It's a pleasure to count with our friends and with all these listeners. Thank you very much for accompanying us. Thank you especially to Lucia, who has accepted coming here, Lucia Quiroga, who is a journalist specialized in gender, who works in journals as important as El Diario.es, El País, especially in political communication, institutional, and business communication. As I say, she's specialized in gender subjects, from feminist things like the Club 25 of Latina or Ciclo. Thank you so much for joining us and for bringing this very important part, which is the contact with the feminist movements that do so much. Thank you, Angel, so much to you. It doesn't matter to me at all having joined in such a late moment. I'm listening to you, and I hope I can bring this to you, this part of the feminist movement and of this communication in terms of gender. And I love to be able to debate with you, and thanks again for counting on me. And the fourth invited person is our co-host, is Claudia from the Mobile Film Festival. She comes from León, who lives in Paris, who speaks English wonderfully well. Really, I'm not going to be able to be you when I grow up, but I'm going to tell my daughter so she follows your example, because I love the way you actually have become. Later on, you tell me how you do it. Thank you. You're the responsible for communication, and we really are very happy to be able to be the loudspeaker for what you do. Thank you, Angel, for the Casa Entendida, and I just want to say the same that all the other speakers have said. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I also want to thank the whole team that today I'm here representing my team, and especially what we want is to be able to allow some visibility of this work of men and women around the world in the movie with a lot of talent. Well, the Mobile Film Festival is not, it's actually a mobile film. It's an international mobile film festival. Even though we are here in Paris, we have already been doing it for 16 years. I joined the team less than 2 years ago, and it's got two very important things to be able to understand this festival. Especially, it's very accessible because the videos are made only with a mobile phone, with a cellular phone. And the idea is that everybody that has an idea, even though maybe they don't have a lot of economical and technical means, they can participate. And the other part is that we're trying to be a festival that with a serious compromise with causes that we believe that are important. So there are some subjects like human rights, several editions on climate, where the Cultural Association of the Spirit has shown a lot of interest. Like last year, you did an event, and this year we're talking about women empowerment around the world. So the short movies are only 1 minute. They're very short. It's a format that is very little known, you could say. The selection is actually 60 of them that you can find in the web and in all nets. And we have chosen 20 with diversity from more countries. We have participants from more than 100 countries, and we have received over 1,100 movies received. So it's very difficult to choose the right ones. But we thought that with Angel, it was a good idea to start the debate, and the rest you can see in the web. So we're going to ask our technicians that you can set the videos, and we invite all the audience to visit them. In 20 minutes exactly, we'll see you.
Uma mulher que luta já foi chamada de bruxa.
Uma mulher que discorda já foi chamada de histérica.
Uma mulher que ensina já foi chamada de louca.
Todos os dias, mulheres morrem por causa de aborto inseguro, padrões de beleza, cor da pele, etnia.
Todos os dias, mulheres morrem por causa da sexualidade, violência, negligência, agrotóxicos, mudanças climáticas. No Brasil, morrem mais mulheres indígenas, negras e trans.
Morrem do silêncio e ainda do pouco acesso a direitos humanos, em especial direitos sexuais e reprodutivos.
Todos os dias, mulheres lançam sementes, gritam, lutam. E o planeta de hoje?
Ele foi planejado, arquitetado e moldado por homens de cabelos brancos que nasceram do útero de uma mulher.
Não precisa ter um útero para ser uma mulher, mas se o útero é do tamanho de um punho, ele também é do tamanho do mundo.
Hey. Bah quoi? Tu me juges? Mais attends, quand c'est un mec qui se tape plusieurs nanas, tu dis que c'est un donjon, non? Alors pourquoi là, quand tu me regardes, tu penses que je suis une salope?
Alors que pourtant, à tout âge, une femme devrait avoir la liberté de son corps et d'en faire ce qu'elle en veut.
Avec qui elle veut, sans que la société ou la religion ne la réprime, l'insulte ou la juge.
Ah, et très important, messieurs, un rapport ce n'est pas qu'une question d'érection.
Non, rien. Parce que nous restons des femmes, avec des envies, des besoins, malgré le temps qui passe.
Nous ne sommes pas que des mères au foyer ou de bonnes épouses.
Alors aujourd'hui, mesdames, je vous demande de dire oui à l'amour, et au droit de faire l'amour, quelles que soient nos envies.
Oui à l'amour et au droit de faire l'amour, quel que soit notre âge.
Alors dites oui à l'amour et au droit de faire l'amour, quelles que soient nos convictions.
Alors disons tous ensemble, oui.
Alors on y va. On en est où?
Esperamos que hoy sean libres de ser y hacer lo que sea. Si este es el caso, recuerden que no siempre fue así, que hubo un tiempo en el que las mujeres no podían estudiar, ni votar, ni trabajar. Si hoy sueñan con ser poetas o científicas, es porque las mujeres que las antecedieron lucharon para garantizar sus derechos. No den nada por hecho, no olviden la historia, aprendan sobre feminismo y siéntanse orgullosas de quiénes son. Este es un recordatorio optimista. Uno que asume que en el futuro la igualdad de derechos y oportunidades entre hombres y mujeres será real, pero de no ser el caso, sepan que tienen una responsabilidad pendiente. Ustedes también serán parte de nuestra historia. Así que estudien, lean, jueguen a lo que sea y con lo que sea. Hagan preguntas, nunca dejen de hacerlas. Sean amables entre ustedes, no permitan que nadie les diga lo que pueden o no hacer, lo que pueden o no ser. Sean lo que les dé la gana. Y si en medio de todo el caos les queda algo de tiempo, escriban un recordatorio para las niñas de su futuro.
I've reached the point in my life where I can choose exactly what I want. Friends, family, theatre, acting, films, music, dancing, and a little bit of romancing. When I make a choice, it's because it will enhance that particular moment in time for me. Perfection. I don't include anything I don't want, but men often find this concept very difficult to swallow. I don't want to see you more than once a week. I don't want you to sleep over. I don't want to meet your family. I don't want to be a part of your family. I don't want us to live together. I don't want a joint bank account. And I don't want to look after you when you are sick and old. And now I'm back to exactly what I want. My perfection.
para ti la felicidad?
La libertad. Estar aquí, durmiendo tranquila, sin pasar todas esas humillaciones, maltratos. Como a los 10, 20 minutos llegó un ministerial. Me saca un Cristo grande, aquí delante de él, que jurara no, lo que yo había hecho. Te dan 25 años, no podemos hacer nada porque no tenemos dinero con qué darles. Para que llegue a otras ciudades, a otros lugares y sepan que ellas deciden sobre su cuerpo.
What do you see? Society calls her a wicked being. Culture objectifies her and calls her unworthy. This woman who will wager her soul to feed her children. This woman who buries her pain and sacrifices everything for the people she loves. This woman who strives hard so her family can thrive. What I see is a true definition of a hero. What do you see?
We bleed, we spot, we stain. We pay, we are in pain. They say that it's embarrassing,
that it's dirty, disgusting.
They say that we overreact. In my country, a woman cannot go to the church with a period. They say that we are filthy on this time of the month. Period.
cualquiera tiene sangre para matar a un animal. ¿Y usted? ¿Sabe matar a un chivo?
Sí. Primero se amarran las patas hasta que se quede tranquilito. El golpe debe ser en la cabeza, de un solo tiro.
This is Emilia. At the age of 8, she was already working with her father at the farm. She never went to school. At 16, she was forced to marry. When her daughter was born, she promised her a better future. This is Clara, Emilia's daughter. She always excelled in all classes. As an adult, she fought for a leadership position and always delivered excellent results, but never got promoted. She earned less than her male co-workers. This is Raquel, Clara's daughter. She started her own company after being fired by her manager. She was pregnant. And this is Maria.
Bonjour. Excusez-moi, le recrutement, c'est bien au 9e ?
Oui. Si toutes les candidates vous ressemblent, j'ai passé une très belle journée.
Mais je suis pas candidate. Je suis la directrice générale adjointe. On vous a pas prévenu de ma visite ?
Non. Pardon, je vous prie bien vouloir accepter mes excuses.
Vous vous rendez compte que ce genre d'attitude est inacceptable ? Ça donne une image pitoyable de la boîte, ça.
Vous avez entièrement raison. Pardon, c'était déplacé.
Ça ne se reproduira plus.
Non, je vous promets.
Tant mieux. Tant mieux parce que je ne suis pas la directrice, je suis juste une candidate et j'aimerais le même respect. Ah, après vous ?
My name is Miriam. I'm 14 years old. I go to St. Peter's Nursery Primary School. I walk to school every day with my friends BC and Aisha. We like to go early so we can pick some mangoes on the way. I like school. My favorite subject is English. I want to be a teacher when I grow up. Papa says school is a waste of time. He says women should stay at home, learn to cook a good meal, and be a good wife. Which is why I'm getting married today to Mr. Obasi. Mr. Obasi is Papa's friend. He brings us bush meat sometimes. He has 3 wives. None of them have given him a son. It makes him angry. But Mama told me not to worry. When I become his wife, I will give him a son because I will be fertile like her. Today, I will become a woman.
It's time.
Autrefois, les femmes n'existaient pas, il n'y avait que des hommes, des grands hommes. Il suffit d'ouvrir un livre d'histoire pour le constater. Un jour, un grand homme a découvert une femme, par hasard. Elle se tenait juste derrière lui, mais comme elle était de petite taille, il ne l'avait pas vue. Voilà pourquoi on dit souvent que derrière chaque grand homme se cache une femme. La femme est donc plus récente que l'homme, et l'homme est souvent contraint de vivre avec une femme plus jeune que lui. Créature rustre, il a fallu inculquer à la femme les bonnes manières, être douce et se taire en public notamment. On lui a aussi confié des tâches valorisantes comme éplucher les patates ou récurer les bidets. Et quand les hommes allaient sauver le monde, les femmes étaient en vacances. Un jour, une femme s'est rendue compte qu'elle n'était pas seule et qu'il y avait sur Terre presque autant de femmes que d'hommes. Les femmes se sont alors dit qu'il était grand temps de commencer à vivre et d'écrire une nouvelle page.
I am impressed. It's been a few days I haven't watched them and they are fantastic. How is it possible to make this kind of animations with a Play-Doh, with the clippings, with a telephone? It's really makes me, speechless. Some of the scripts are incredible. I have my favorite one, but I'm going to start this debate asking our the ladies that are here with us today to share a little thought about what is the one that is their favorite one. If you took it with you, we want to start with Christina, which is the one that is farthest away. Christina, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, here we are. Christina, what is your favorite video?
Is it okay if I say 2?
Of
Is
course.
that right? Okay. I found the one where the 2 young, it was the one that was closest to Play-Doh as possible, where the 2 flowers were walking towards each other. It looks like one was a girl and one was a boy, and they were taking equal steps coming to the school. And the young girl, or we're assuming is the young girl, stopped as it looked like she was going to step over or step on top of the young boy's foot. And I think the symbolism of sort of, at least in my interpretation, was the the lack of intention to step over someone and to hold back and to go forward together. I thought that that was an immense amount of symbolism when it comes to thinking about school and unequal access to school for young girls in many parts of the world. I don't know if I interpreted it the right way, but that's I thought that that was particularly powerful. And the second one that I thought was particularly powerful too was the one of the young girl, The Bride, I think is what it was called. And just sort of the how it represents so many, at least 132 million young girls around the world, you know, who are out of school and don't have the opportunity to go forward with their lives, even if they might want to go to school, but are not in school. And then thinking about how many of those girls, how the proportion of them that meet that fate because they are forced into early marriage, I think is particularly representative of the struggles that many millions of girls face around the world. So I thought that those two were particularly poignant for me.
You can tell that you deal with education there in that world. That's really actually talks so much to you. So I actually do agree with the fact that these two were extraordinary. There are many others. Monica, what video do you like more? Well, I love them. Congratulations, Claudia, and the team of this festival. I love the one last year of climatic change, and I love the one this year. I've chosen one this year that I already chosen. So you know, it happens like Christina. I've chosen actually two. I love the one of actually it was the fourth one. How women we have to help the coming generations because we're helping. We actually change now, or we trot the walk for the next generations. I also watched the one of Emilia, this mother that works for her daughter, the daughter that works for the next generation, also connected with sustainability and environment. And I think, like Christina, that connects it with education, because I think that in this moment of pandemic that we're living, we will take a lot of responsibility of the present. And this subject of equality, of taking care of the environment, we think that the fight, we have there's a lot to do, but I think it's very important what we're actually doing now, because it's advancing already in this way. So I love these two because of what it means, of the responsibility of the present, without caring about the reaching the goal today, but what it means to actually walk all this way, because of it's a lot of responsibility, and it's also we're doing it for the ones to come after us. So Ana Moreira, which is one of the invited persons today, we also want to say to the audience that if you want to give your opinions, the chat is open, so you can say which one is your favorite. You can think about it, make your own reflections, mention which one is your favorite one. We're going to be delighted to be able to see it. Maybe for me it's going to be a little bit more difficult because I'm going to have to be leading the different conversations, but the rest of the audience will be able to see it. And then when I finish, I can actually take a look at it, and I will be able to know what you think. We're also going to make a selection of questions, or maybe towards the middle, depends. We're going to answer some of these questions. I'm going to leave Lucia at the end, and I'm going to ask Claudia, because so Lucia can actually talk about the first question. Actually, they're almost your children now. So which one is your favorite? Well, I do coincide in what my colleagues have said, but there's one in particular that I really like from the very beginning, and I defended it very strongly, which is from Ecuador, which is called a recordatory for the girls in the future, which is the one that is made with clippings of stories from scientific women and fighting women. And I think that the message is one of the best one transmitted, the one that actually transmits the best, the one that actually we wanted to give, that for the girls of the future, everything that we get today is for them. So at the end, it says something like, and if one day we get to get all the rights that we're fighting for, we don't forget how we actually the process, how all these men and women that help to get us to this point. And there's another one that maybe is not so hopeful because it's actually telling us there's still a lot to do. Is the one called The World, from Iran, which at the beginning we only see the boys that are playing during the break, and we imagine that there are two teams, but we never think until the end what we're actually going to see, which is the end that the girls cannot play, and the teacher comes and scolds them because they are not allowed to play. It's such a basic right as playing this game. So this for me, actually they talk to me a lot. Yeah, both of them are excellent. The first one that you mentioned that talks about the evolution of this fight for the rights for so long, and that still continues. They were still actually here to give you people to continue going in that direction. So, and Lucia knows a lot about that. So Lucia, that's where I want to leave you for the last, so that your answer about your favorite videos actually links with what you actually live daily, this connection with the feminist movement. So I would like you to tell us what is actually, the main areas that women, the most active women, actually are working most on. And also want to take the opportunity to tell you, to all of you guests, that even though that I'm going to launch some questions in which each one of you is the specialist in the area, so you can interrupt whenever you want. We want this to be a very fluid, very open debate. So Lucia, which is the one that you actually like best? Well, actually, my favorite one, doubtlessly, is actually the work interview in the elevator. Due to the way I am actually trained, I like such very strong message, but also coincide with Mónica and Claudia and those that actually refer to the concept of different the fight of women in several generations. But the one of the interview was seen a lot in Spain, and I think that all the videos have a perfectly adequate format. They're very short, they're very direct, they're very easy to broadcast. And they also offer a format that is very friendly for the kind of communication that is actually taking place. It's a very mobile communication, very fast, very fluid. So all of them I like, but this interview in the elevator is the one of the main axis of this social movement of feminism. This is one I like, which is actually the gender break, and which actually you can see in the work, and actually has to do with the violence that we women actually see. In this case, it's a symbolic violence. It seems subtle, but it's not so subtle, because if that man was actually using his position of power, who he thinks he has over a candidate, actually we will be talking about that abuse. When he actually realizes that he cannot actually exercise that power position, he actually feels humiliated. I'd love to see the continuation of this short film, because he realizes that if she's actually a candidate to an interview, his reaction wouldn't be so good, and worse things would actually have arisen. But I love this video. So actually, what we're asking me, the question that you're actually launching, the big axis of the feminist fight is the violence, masculine violence. Actually, during everything has to do with gender, have been very much affected because of the crisis. But the masculine violence. Actually, this is actually a short film that talks about women living with the people that have actually harmed them, with the men that have harmed them. Another, we're talking about ecofeminism. I think this is one of the main topics that are actually being introduced in the agenda, and that I think is going to be an agenda of the future of feminism. How actually identify the common origins in the suppression of women, in the constant in the climate, how everything is basically based in this paternalistic society. And I don't know if you also want me to talk about solutions, or if you want to leave it for later. Well, actually, if you want to mention the ways to solve this, well, I think it's perfectly right. I'm going to be very brief, and I think we're actually going to develop this later. What is very important is that we women actually participate in all the spaces that are decision taking, from micro to micro, and so that we use the gender perspective from the smallest parcel that we have, our home, our family, all the way from work, opening the focus. And then, of course, everything has to do with social and political areas, that we are present, that we're heard, and that our point of view is actually applied, because it's usually very strong and it's part of the solution. I actually take the very first solution that you actually allows me to link with our friend Mónica does, who is the president of Women Action Sustainability. Tell us, what is Women Action Sustainability? Because it has to do a lot with what Lucia was actually saying. Mónica? We cannot hear you. Here we go. Well, actually, you know very well, Angel, that sustainability is a topic we have been dealing with for many years. And we thought that it would be very difficult to make a real change if it's not actually integrated from decision making, from the top. All the people that are part of this association, actually, Angel is part of these people. We have been for many years working, and that's why I actually connected with the videos that I mentioned. We have been working on this for many years, so they were in the right time, so that they're actually solutions that actually are set in place. And also, when we talk about decision taking for women, it's difficult to advance in managing positions. If we want these changes in the way decisions are taken, that's why sustainability and women have to be there. Society cannot renounce to 50% of the talent that we have in society. This moment is true that there are important advances, because if we talk about the board of chairman of enterprises, due to the requisites, say that 30% of women have to be in the board. We're in 27, but actually it has to be 30. But when there's no recommendations like in management, only 70% are in the management. So how do we move when actually have to be forced by an organization? But otherwise, if in a natural way, it doesn't happen that way. So I want to mention also the data about leadership of females. There's McKinsey has actually published, who is one of the most important strategic consultants, paper that analyzes what the main characteristics of leadership are related to the future trends. It analyzes 8 trends, and I'm going to read it in order not to be any mistake with numbers and figures, because it's very curious for me. It happens that the control and corrective actions and individual decisions don't have anything to do with the future, and men are where they are at the top, whereas the intellectual stimuli and communication, efficient communication for men and women, are qualities where we can find 50-50, and both sides have a very good disinvolvement. And women in these trends that have to do with the future, maybe many of you are going to hear, women have to do with inspiration to the others, they taking decisions and with other members of the team, recognizing and the development of people. And what I think is that when it comes to the management of companies, we are in the change of trends. That actually, if you were mentioned before, that female leadership we have applied in different contexts, and maybe in this process of individual decision, they were underneath because of the weight of the control of men, of patriarchs. some individual decisions, these collective decisions where there's more participation and listening and actually rewarding the rest of the team, women are more powerful. I don't know, Angel, if I've answered to what you were saying. I think that we all have seen it in the past few years that women has been is now being part of the companies. Still a lot to do, but 30%. I think personally that I work with a lot of companies, I've noticed a lot how women are more and more in management. I personally think that you're more directed to, you're more sensitive with everything has to do with corporate responsibility, how to deal with teams. And you have abilities that I think they are essential for companies and the society at large works, and they're very, very welcome. Do you think that just because of the fact that you're actually mothers, or that you can actually be mothers, that you're so close to life? I don't know. If you are more prone to be sensitive, this kind of thing, or is it general that that takes place in some women and some women don't? Actually, I don't have data or statistics to actually give a proper judgment about this. I can give you my personal opinion. What I think about what has to deal with that, taking care of people, has to do with the culture, with the education, how the society is. So women have always been linked to taking care, and that culture of taking care of others, of feeding others, it's a role that we have always developed, and we have always felt comfortable doing that. What I think is that we are in a process of transformation, because what women are doing is that we still assume the roles that we were doing before, and we are assuming new roles that are coming along now. So I don't know if women are the large stress one in society, or if there are other women that feel like that. Because I can speak at an individual level. I want to take care of my children, look beautiful, my hair and my nails, make a wonderful meal, make a wonderful report, take care of my children. So everything that is expected from us, we have to do, and everything that we want to get at the professional level. So what I think is that it's a changing point. So as society, as women, we're learning to manage this. What I mean is that this is a transition moment in society. I think we're advancing as a society to what I was mentioning before, to use the best talent and to manage it the best of ourselves. And in this learning process, as in all complex change that has taken place in society, we're learning. I think that men can actually do wonderful jobs taking care of their families and friends and everything, and women can do too. It's only deciding who actually plays each role, and which roles are actually liberated, because to give 100% at everything we do is very complex. It's very complex, it's very difficult. But in the case of women, as you say, you assume, I don't know if historically or traditionally, roles that should be shared. Your backpack is even heavier, but an empowered woman who has set in motion such an important project that they're with such strong responsibility, who has introduced this facing such old-fashioned ways of thinking. What do you want to say to this woman that wants to do things? What are the keys to help her, to empower her? What is the first thing that actually comes across your head? Angela, I would say the same thing to a woman and to a man. I think that we're at a point that we have to live our lives from our purpose, and to feel that what we do, whatever is that it contributes to a society and to a better society and world. If this for a person wants to take care of the children 100% of the time, because it's the purpose in life, I think it's wonderful. And if they want to work in the business world, and they want to work in the board of, it's what is really important is to find the best role that you can actually develop and what you can do. And if it's true that women it was complicated in the past to advance in our professional careers. And I don't think, maybe now it's a little bit better, but it's still complicated. But if things are done from purpose, with energy, with strength, being prepared, with education, not being afraid, being surrounded from persons that men and women that are the right ones, it's a big advance. And I think that some of the guests have mentioned the video of helping one woman to another. I think that women are not used to this, but maybe Lucia can tell us about this. But I think it's very important for women, the nets of women, to help each other, to collaborate. We are actually very used to this factor of networking. We leave our we leave our home, and we don't go to so many events, and we don't socialize. It's very important for us to have this connection, to help each other, and to help in whatever we can to women of younger generations, and hopefully us we will be helped by women that are older than us. Because in my age, I'd love to help somebody that's young, but I love when there's women that have more experience than me, because experience is a huge asset. If they can help us, that's great. It's like the doors that we're opening. I think that support is very important, but not because they're exclude men, but because we have to learn new contexts where women are not used to, and maybe they haven't taught us since we were girls, because it's not the same society. We're not in Iran, but we still have a lot of things to learn as a society, and this society goes at full speed. So this is a great effort that we need to have. Very large effort. I'm going to leave Christina for the topic of education for the end, which is very important. But communication is just as important. We have two experts in communication, both Claudia and Lucia. And this topic, me dealing with communications, for me, it touches me very closely. Today, the networks and the different media is very important. There's a big change. They're trying to change this making women as a thing, as a sexual symbol. But in a way, the new technologies also allow that pornography, cyber accusation, and there's two cliches. One way, there's one way that want to this idea of female, and the other one this use and abuse of this image, cyber abuse. One question for Claudia. Maybe Lucia also wants to mention something. How can women actually act in front of these new threats that mean the misuse, bad use of the net, of the internet? How do they affect in the social networks and in the communication, mass communication? Do you have an opinion formed about this, Claudia? Well, I think that actually we have seen it in one of the short films, has to do with censorship of a nipple of a woman, whereas the nipple of the man is not actually censored. In social networks, we can talk about many things. Actually, this topic is very wide. There's people talking about sorority, which is solidarity amongst women. It's actually there how we can actually build. We see a lot of work nets online, because I think internet and the worldwide is it's a wonderful thing to learn and to broadcast information. There are dangers that we need to share, but I think that women can find their place and support, because today we have access to many nets of information that are very, very good. So I think that is actually there how to inform others, and I also want to find out what Lucia is saying, because I think she has a lot to say too. Excuse me. Yeah, I was actually going to bring forward the same concept of sorority that Mónica mentioned, and Claudia has actually given a name. We come from a system that was created by and for men, and you said, Mónica, many of the decisions were taken in after work, where we're actually excluded because we have to go home to take care of our children, or because we actually wanted to be doing other things. That was just simply having drinks after work. So in order to break those structures where we actually didn't fit, one of the systems is clearly sorority, the support among all of us at all levels. This is in the praxis, in the practical of professional networks of women, safe places for women. We would talk about several things. And taking this on the online, yes, it's true. There are threats. Everything that is made public can bring us cyberbullying and so on. But it can also bring very important things, such as breaking the difference between sexes. Like the very important movements in the United States, like Me Too in the United States, or Cuéntame in Spain, which has allowed women about talking about sexual violence, because we didn't even talk about it, not even with our friends. With all these things actually came out, we started talking about with friends, with people that we know, colleagues at work, things that were actually seemed normal and there were signs in our lives. Actually, it all came out, saw the light, and it was all thanks to communication in the internet and social net. So the same way that has risk, it brings forward opportunities for women. Very well. So now we're going to take the opportunity. Christina Kwauk is in Washington. She's an expert in education. Christina, I'm going to ask you something at the beginning, and then later on we're going to talk about the role of women in the fight against climate change, regarding climate crisis. But first of all, I would like you to speak, to tell us about what you did in Centro for Universal Education. What's your specialty? Because education is a key lever for this transformation, and with the help of everybody, including women in the managing position, decision-making, communication, but the new generations depend on what is being done today. So what actually doing? Please tell everybody at what point you are.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And I've thoroughly enjoyed the discussion that we've been having so far, because I think so many of the threads ultimately go down to education. And so the work that I do as a non-resident fellow at the Brookings Institution Center for Universal Education is focusing on gender in education, gender equality in and through education. We oftentimes talk about it as girls' education. And in typical spaces, this, the discussion around girls' education tends to be about those 132 million girls around the world who are out of school and not going to school because of poverty, because of harmful gender practices like early and forced child marriage or female genital mutilation that then pushes them into the rapid transition to adulthood. We oftentimes talk about, gender inequality from the context of, oh, it's far away from us. It's in countries like the video of the young girl bride, where it's far away from us and it's an issue of developing countries or low and middle income country kind of things. But at the end of the day, when we look at girls' education or we look at gender equality in education, we're talking about transforming our education systems, because our education systems themselves have been designed to perpetuate the same kinds of ideologies of exploitation, oppression, and competition over that has created the kinds of ideologies that we see justify the destruction of our environment, the destruction of other peoples, and so on. So the work that I do is very much focused not only on how do we improve the access to education for girls in low-income countries, but also how do we reimagine education for everyone, even in countries like Spain, even in countries like the US and the UK, because ultimately the things that we see in the videos about discrimination of women in the workplace, or unequal ladders and opportunities to get into the workplace or to enter into leadership positions, these are all undergirded in our education systems, you know. So a lot of my work is focused on, you know, how do we tackle our gender inequality that we face in society through a more gender responsive education, a more gender transformative education, and how do we do that now? Because we don't have generations to wait. You know, the videos show us that, you know, the 4 generations of women who have been fighting to reach some form of equality. Well, our planet doesn't have time to wait for another 4 generations to achieve equality. And so how do we transform our education systems so that the values that children learn and the socialized norms and roles that girls and boys come to identify with, how do we ensure that those are equal so that we can not only survive as human society, but that our future generations have a quality life on this planet? So that's kind of what I focus on. You know, just thinking about all of there's so many great threads with what our other panelists have said. I'm happy to dive into any of those issues specifically.
Sí, ¿qué proyectos tenéis en marcha? Cuéntame algunos de los proyectos.
What projects actually do you have right now and that you're working on?
Yeah, well, right now, one of the big projects is what we're calling a new green learning agenda. And so this is essentially a call to action to governments, civil society, nonprofit organizations to really rethink the way our education is structured and the content that we deliver and the way that we educate is done. And so this is started from the idea that if we want to achieve, let's say, a more sustainable world, we have multiple ways of doing that, right? Just like our colleagues at Project Drawdown, for example, have mapped out, you know, more than 80 solutions to help us solving the climate crisis. When we think about education, sometimes we get very narrow-minded and we only think that there's one way to do education, when in reality, there are multiple education solutions that we can enact in order to create socially sustainable and environmentally sustainable societies. And so this new green learning agenda is an effort to show governments 3 different ways that we can actively pursue education in a very different way. And that's thinking first along the lines of how we think about our technical education. So how do we think about making sure that women and men have the technical skills for green jobs, so green sector jobs, whether that's in renewable energy, or that might be thinking about care jobs as green jobs, so thinking about educators and healthcare professionals as green jobs as well. They have a very strong role in strengthening our adaptive capacity to climate change and to environmental issues, and we hardly ever think of them as green jobs, so environmentally sustainable jobs. So, how do we think about education from the technical side to really think about the specific capacities, the specific competencies that people need in order to, work and enhance a green economy. And then another approach is to think about how our general education systems, our primary and secondary education systems, how these are also oriented to socially sustainable and environmentally sustainable outcomes. So thinking about things, we call them life skills or transversal skills, 21st century skills, breadth of skills, thinking about communication, problem solving, teamwork, critical thinking, and really thinking about all these important skills that the workplace needs, yes, but that our society needs in order to tackle hard problems. How do we ensure that our youngest children are also receiving the kind of education that not only teaches them equality between girls and boys, but that the values that sustain gender equality are the same kinds of values that help us to sustain environmental sustainability. And then a third way is really thinking about transformation. How do our education systems seed the kind of social transformation that we need for our economic systems and our economic structures to also transform towards sustainability? And so that's thinking about things like collective action, or recognizing power inequalities in our relationships with others, recognizing and valuing indigenous knowledges, and really thinking about what kinds of skills and capacities girls and boys, women and men need to help transform our societies towards much more sustainable ones. So, my current work is focused on, really putting forward this, what we're calling a new green learning agenda, into public discourse, so that we can really begin to change the way we think about education and how education is so tied to the way we socialize harmful gender norms and the way we can potentially transform those gender norms as well. So there's so many connections to make with the other comments. I'll stop there for now.
Sí, pero hemos abierto un melón. A mí me parece...
We have actually opened a big melon of information. Actually, I was thinking that actually we're going to continue with education, with environment, which is very important for us. We deal a lot with that. I always think, why in schools there's no education on the differences and how to behave between men and women? What do you think about this? Do you think that education at school, starting at school, can also assume that function?
Yes, absolutely. It should. It absolutely should. The challenge is that our education systems are built on an incredibly outdated model in terms of the outcomes that it's oriented to. So if you imagine our education systems today are a byproduct of the Industrial Revolution era, where schools were really seen as this place where you can produce workers for these companies that then help to grow the economy, right? So the very underlying purpose of our education systems are designed to support the mass production of a workforce to then sustain an unsustainable economic world order. And so when we think about what's the purpose of our education systems, we think about, the liberal arts education and how it's intended to really cultivate, human relationships and a broader understanding of the world. And, these much more sort of liberal ideas around what an education is supposed to be geared towards. But the problem is that our incentive structures in the education system are designed to measure knowledge increases, competencies on particular subject areas. It's designed to be purely inputs from the teacher, outputs from the students, right? In terms of what we are valuing in our education systems. And instead, we're not focused on, whether or not young girls and young women and young men and boys are understanding the importance of social relationships and care, right? How disconnected our education systems are even from the concept of care and compassion and social relationships, and how it's very much focused and structured along subject area expertise, right? You learn your math, you learn your science, you learn your language studies, but it's not about understanding our human relationships with each other, the social consequences of our economic choices in one part of the world and the consequences faced by communities in other parts of the world. We don't emphasize care and social relations in our education systems because they were designed for a very different outcome. So I think absolutely, when you hear the news of, how can there be, these atrocious acts of violence against young girls, against young children, against babies. You hear about these awful instances of rape of babies in different parts of the world. And you're just like, how is that possible? How did a human being not get taught that is morally wrong, right? And it's because our education systems aren't designed to teach these things. They're designed to teach math and science and not social relationships of care.
Sí. Sí, existen, bueno, inmediatamente en cuanto
Actually, immediately, the moment you touch this kind of values, there's a part of society that completely refuses that these topics are talked about in more common spaces or collaborative spaces where boys and girls have to face words that are actually taboo. Nonetheless, the sooner that they're talked about, the more they're normalized, the more they're learned, understood, and it's discovered what is good and what is bad for everybody, both for the individual or for society. I wanted to ask Lucia if the different feminist movements that are taking place now, education, are there specific things that are being done about what you just, what can you say about what you just heard? Well, I agree with many of the arguments that have been exposed. Obviously, we have to teach boys and girls, since they are children, and all kinds of things that have to do with equality. People talking about chat, about menstruation, and one of the short films also deals with menstruation. How is it possible that adult women and well-formed, educated, we don't know that we have cycles, and that we don't know that there are alternatives to tampons and to other things that are uncomfortable. So besides these things, we want to bring forward a different perspective, which is focus on education and communication. I think that often women have been focused, many girls have been educated with values of equality, with a gender perspective, but we have to put the focus on you, men, on boys, and in particular, when we're talking about of masculine violence, it's good that we women receive the message that we can get out of this kind of message, but you men have to say, don't hit women, don't control their mobiles, don't rape, don't kill. So to put all the weight on our back, it has to do with education, communication, and everything. Makes a generation of young women that are quite empowered and educated, but now suddenly they found that boys and young men, they have not received that kind of message. So for me, all these campaigns against male abuse is like call and denounce, but many of these denounces, the woman who is sexually denouncing ends up dead. Maybe we have to change the focus and to talk to men. Don't kill. It's not good. It's not a healthy relationship, the one that controls, the one that kills, the one that rapes. That's why we have to put an accent and the stress there. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it has to do with everybody. Claudia, Mónica, do you want to say something in this sense?
Cristina de la educación y también quizás relacionado con lo que decía Lucía.
What I want to say regarding to Lucia is that we all are actually disconnected from our own essence, because sometimes we think that we have grown in cement and we don't have any connection with nature. I think it's very important to remind us that we're all part of nature, that we're all elements of nature. And we also have to be educated regarding feminism. I agree with Lucia's mentioning, but I also think that we need to create with the language that we also love. Maybe this is utopic, but since our nature and plants and animals, and due to the social model we have as humans, we have to take care of each other. We have to respect each other. We have to love each other. And sometimes we are guided by values, like Christina was mentioning, as if we were chain production units. So there's an input comes in and an output that comes out. And all that configures, and love all the explanation that you gave, Christina, because you include a lot of elements that have to do with thinking that we humans are production systems. And actually, we are part of nature, looking for living and parts of a scheme that will lead us to be happier. And in the past few years, we have forgotten about it. Actually, what we're mentioning now, some of the problems that are being mentioned have to do with this, to think that there are relationships or people that are actually like use and throw away without respect and without love, which is the one we have to have amongst people. And Angela, I love the environment, so we also have to have the same kind of respect with animals and plants, of course. And actually, we're going to talk now about this topic that also has a lot of things to say. Let's see how Manuel introduces chicha, which is a lot of meat, a lot of beef, which is the environment. It's a subject that we don't talk so much, but in the Paris Agreement, it says that the different parts, the countries, should consider the equality of gender, the empowerment of women, and intergenerational equity. There's three objectives of sustainable development of the United Nations that are going to be developed in this decade, specific about this one. Fourth, which is education. The fourth is gender, and the fifth, that is climate action. It means that the international community recognizes that we have to deal with this, and which is key for the development of society, and a better society for everybody, animals and humans and women, of course. But ecofeminism, and this is what part of the argument of its argument says, that the exploitation and the degradation of the natural world and the subordination and the oppression of women are all in the same origin. Lucia, what is that origin? Please tell us about that part of the discourse in which the environment and the oppression towards women have the same oppressor. Well, I was just mentioning before, and bringing forth again, I think is a patriarchal system and the capitalist system. Within this vision of feminism as a transversal movement that incorporates how the fight of feminism, as I was mentioning before, it's coming stronger all the time. It has to do with relating all these oppressions and proposing a common solution, which goes through offering alternatives to that system from a feminist perspective. Economic and feminist. Feminist economy has a lot to say in this sense. Regarding this topic, and talking about sorority, I'd like to mention a few experts. That's not my area of expertise. There are women like Yaya Herrera, Maria Paz, Alicia Puleo, who are studying a lot in this country. In particular, I want to say something Maria Paz said. She says that we have to develop a revolution that has to go through three axes: values, behaviors, and political policies. It's very important to change the values, society that reflects more equality, and of course, climate, behavior, such as how our behavior relates to that. And she gives the example of cars. I think this is a very graphical example. A very big car, the big four-wheel, super masculine, super polluters. Why do we all have all these big cars in cities? This is the big symbol of the Iberian macho, the American macho, and many other machos all over the world. But the public policies have been developed in its majority by men who also love big cars that pollute a lot. This seems very silly, but I think it's an example that's very good because it demonstrates that women, when we access to these places of power, we apply different kind of political policies. We use more public transport. We have a different concept of life, which is actually what it all translates to. Yayo Herrera is always making herself the same question. What relates ecology with feminism? And is translated into ecofeminism. What does sustain life? Generally, is we, women, with the care and the earth. And to close this down, I'm going to the solutions. I like very much what it's been the new Green Deal in the United States. It's an agreement on the climate that doesn't forget equality among men and women and people that have different economic situations, so that they're not left behind. And it's funny that its main Natasha Cortez is the woman that is actually the leader of this. How the women then that reaches a position of power leads to better situation. Actually, without knowing, you actually pose a question to Christina. Alejandra Ocasio Cortez, the new Biden administration. Christina, do you think that they're going to be able to do everything they want?
Green New Deal.
I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic because I think, especially in the last 2 years, there has been so much mounting momentum around the need to do something radically different. And just seeing how our current social and economic and political structures have left so many behind, that I think now more, when you look at public perceptions and public opinion about the new Green Deal, the Green New Deal, I forget that mine is the new Green Learning Agenda. This is the Green New Deal. When we think about the public perceptions around this platform, it's immensely high compared to 4 years ago, where things that might have touched on racial justice and environmental racism were taboo to talk about because it meant having to look at our racial problems in the United States, And I think that, especially in the last 2 years with the Black Lives Matters movement, even with the Me Too movement, the Sunrise movement, the Fridays for Future climate strikes, all of these have really helped to bolster public opinion around the need to do something dramatically and radically different. So whether or not we get there, I think is then the politics of Washington, D.C. all come together, with our current political landscape. But we have close to the numbers that we need to be able to pass legislation. I think the challenge now is where to start, because there's just so many different things that need to happen in terms of environment, transportation, agriculture, infrastructure, education, health, so many things that are intertwined, that I think the task is to figure out what is a single strand that you pull that pulls everything else with it, And I think that's where some really strategic thinking is needed, because whatever is the first thing that goes through will help open the doors for everything else that comes after that. So I'm optimistic, but there's still a lot of political uphill battle that needs to be fought on many fronts. But the public opinion for it is so much better than it was 4 years ago.
Desde luego, es una labor.
It's a huge amount of work, because we have to face a lot of things, and there's a big resistance socially too. We cannot forget that there's 76 million Americans who have actually voted somebody like Trump, who represents everything that is opposite to the idea of advances, inequality, improvement of society, the way we actually understand it. But I don't want to stop talking about a subject in which our specialists, our beloved friend in common, Catherine Wilkinson. I would like everybody to see her book on the internet. There was 80 real solutions to stop climatic change. So the degradation of ecosystems that actually sustain us, humans and all animals. She points out, I want you to look for the TED talk of Laura Wilkinson, who is really good. She points out a lot of things, but one of them is that women are more vulnerable than men before the effects of global warming. Most of the migrants are women in many cases. Women in many parts of the world are the ones who have to go and fetch the water, the wood, and the longer or the farthest away that they have to find these raw materials basic for the survival, the least time they will have to educate themselves for themselves and for many other things. So there's a lot of statistical data in this sense. However, they have in their hand, you women have in your hands many more tools to actually change the situation. In the drawdown report, I could talk about another report of the OECD that says that around 80% of the decisions of purchase decisions in the European Union, women purchase domestic or home purchases, what kind of energy, what we're going to eat, even what car we buy. Before we're talking about the big car, maybe the man insists, but the daily purchasing, women, according to OECD, women have much stronger weight. So imagine if the feminine sensitivity through ecological products is that way, we can make a lot of things in this way. But what I would like to point out of her report of Wilkinson is that the education of girls and on family planning, if it could be reduced, the population of humanity in 1,000 millions, in 1 billion, in that projection that there is from here to 2050, if we're able to reduce that increase of population, empowering women so that women decide how many children she wants to have, and not that men decide, or the social structures that surround them. So maybe we could save 120 billion tons of carbon dioxide, which are the ones that are creating the heating, the increase of sea level, the droughts, etc. However, there are 130 million girls without schooling, you were mentioning before, and 250 million women who have no access to contraceptives. So my question is how to educate, thinking in the future, societies that in many cases are hooked in the past. It's a complex, the answer is complex. I don't know if we're going to be able to solve it. What can you tell us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that work is so powerful to point the attention to the need and the importance around girls' education and family planning. It is, the nexus of our ability to achieve the kind of social equitable structures in order for us to have, to have a positive impact on the environment, right? But I think the challenge with this argument, though, is that most of the models that look at the relationship between education and family planning and the ability to achieve the kind of outcome for the planet, it's very much drawn on a very small portion of the global population. And so when we look at, the connection between girls' education and her reproductive life, this is only one dimension of the power of girls' education, right? This is looking at the very basic, the very minimal, what can happen in terms of, the number of people on the planet. But when we look at the quality of the education that a girl receives, we can achieve so much more in terms of potential carbon reduced, okay? So when we look at, for example, there's a substantive body of evidence that shows strong correlation between female political empowerment, female decision-making, female leadership, and pro-environmental outcomes. So countries with higher representation of women in parliament, for example, also have higher rates of passing international treaties around climate change. They have stricter climate change policies. They have larger land areas that they have designated as conservation areas. They also have smaller carbon footprints. So we know that if we ensure that girls are learning in school, that they can be leaders, if we are, providing them with the opportunities to become leaders, that we get more women in leadership positions, not only do their companies thrive, but the planet thrives. So, we have to think about the quality of education, right? And then when we look at beyond leadership, when we think about the skills that girls need, you look at our current fossil fuel driven economy today, right? And you look at the makeup of where men and women are in that economy. Many women around the world are at the fringes, the outskirts of that economy, right? If we're thinking about the world transferring into a green economy, how can we get there if 35% of women in the world are enrolled in science, technology, engineering, and math subjects of study, where the majority of our typical definition of green jobs are going to emerge from, right? So most of the green jobs that are going to emerge in the future are going to be dependent on STEM skills, the science, technology, engineering, and math skills. But women and girls around the world are disproportionately represented in those fields of study. So if we're not ensuring that girls are taught that they can pursue these fields of study, that they should pursue these fields of study, and that they have, a full possibility of creating innovative ideas that can then bring them from the fringes of the fossil fuel economy into the center of a green economy, then we can achieve so much more as human society in terms of the kinds of innovation that's needed for our planet. So an investment in girls' education is important because, yes, the empowerment degree, the empowerment dimension, the control of women's reproductive rights and their reproductive health and their reproductive choices is essential. But that is only one piece of what an investment in girls' education can potentially do for our society and for our planet. So, yes, 120 gigatons of carbon reduction is a huge when it comes to, reducing the number of people on the planet. But that is it's a troubling way to consider, that's the only reason why we're investing in girls' education is because then we get population reduction. That's not the most aspirational when it comes to why we want to ensure girls have a quality education. We want to see that they get into leadership positions. We want to see that they innovate in our green sector industries, right? So I think
Claro, no se trata de limitar la libertad de la gente, sino que la
freedom
gente...
of people, but the people for people to see that women decide if they want to have 6 children or 4 children or 2 or 1, but that they can decide themselves. Well, thank you so much, Christina. I think it's very revealing. Do you want to point something out? Because otherwise, we'll only have 15 minutes, and I would like to start wrapping up with a final round. Claudia, Mónica, do you have about this question? Do you want to mention anything? How to educate thinking in the future in societies that are actually hooked in the past, or even about something that Christina has just mentioned about these green jobs for women. Maybe Mónica, can I ask you a final question? Which, from your perspective as a as managing position connected with the world of the enterprise, would you invite the audience, women, to look for jobs related with the new economy, low in carbon? What kind of jobs could those be? Well, as I was mentioning before, is that we have to move with the purpose that we people, we are like cells, and the ecosystem where we are developing, it's where we feel well is the one where we have to be in. I think we are changing. there's a sentence that says, we hope that you don't need to live historical things because our generation is actually living it, and many things are changing. There was a time when we were talking about green jobs, but the change is so big that I don't know how to explain it. It's not that all the jobs are going to be green, but if you study engineering, you have a very important job changing from the production, industrial systems to the way of transports to the energy. So you can study. Well, I am a big defender of study economy, engineering, mathematics, and to use science and the tools that you have to transform from there. I also agree very much with Christina saying about the way of educating. It doesn't mean that learning this kind of knowledge is an input that creates an output, but you can create many different outputs. Actually, what I think is also a very important responsibility of people to work in different positions that lead to this change. This is social change. Think what we can actually do with what we're doing now and the position that life is giving us, because in the end we can live with a certain margins and limits in the positions that life has given us and with our possibilities, but from the point where we are, we can do a lot and we can bring a lot. There's times where sciences, technology, maths, knowledge, but also from the economy, from the business world, a lot of things are going to change. So I think that it's very important to focus in what we can actually do to change things. And lastly, I also want to mention something, Angel, is that I believe that we're in the moment in the world where all areas of society talk about what's going on. The letter of Rufin, which is the CEO or the most important investor in the world, and many of the things that we're saying now, the largest investing company in the world is saying that, and it's talking about female talent and talking about ethnic minorities that are not being taken into consideration, considering climate change as a possibility. And so I think this is the right moment to change society, to give the best of ourselves, and I hope that many people that actually study. I'm telling my children, please study and help us to change a better world. So I think this is the moment from our knowledge and our values to add up, to make all the changes that we actually need. This is fantastic. With this, it's just, it's like now, it's like the standards is very high. So last questions I want to ask Claudia, who has not been able to participate for a very long time. In the chat, there's a lot of people asking if the different topic of the videos, if it changes from one place to another in the world. What can you tell us regarding this? Well, actually, yes. Well, I just want to say that it's been very interesting. I'm very happy to hear all the guests. But to end up, I would like to say something before I answer the question. And I think that Lucia is going to be to agree. We have talked about sorority, but there's something that we haven't mentioned before. We've talked about feminism, but I have to say that it has to say an intersectional feminism that touches all the perspectives, race, gender, culture, sexual orientation. I think we have talked about the fact that we advance all together much better. And I've talked about climate and feminism, but Lucia just showed the fact that patriarchal and capitalism, they're similar. So, if they're the things that together they get farther. So I think that we actually can get farther, putting all our fights together and linking this to the question that was asked before in the chat. Is very surprising when we see the 1,000 shores that we got. It's incredible the amount of fights and themes that existed regarding the part of the world where they came from. So maybe what we wanted to do was to make a selection that could give a voice to all these different trends. With maybe in the West is, we have already taken it for granted. In other places, is it's the everyday problem. Is the most important fight that they have to fight against. So, but without being moralizing, just basically what we're trying to give is voice to every single one. So if education was more important, the subject was more important in more developing countries, Christina actually mentioned it extremely well. Maybe other topics such as that have to do with business, they came more from Europe. So that's how we can see we are in different points in the way, but there's a lot to do yet. And it's together, men and women, how we're going to get it. So I just want to close what I just mentioned with this reflection. Lucia, I'm going to ask you last comment. I think that a head like yours that thinks so strongly, you would love to tell us. Yeah, I think I like very much what Claudia has said because it was in my notes. I also believe in an intersectional feminism. This actually, it's also been very much doubted. It's a strong debate, but I also believe in an intersectional feminism and inclusive that includes everybody and all fights. Only that way we can advance. So I strongly feel that that half of the population is women, and even amongst women, there's a big diversity of circumstances and realities. So we need to have the capacity to integrate all the rest of fights and reivindications. And if you ask me, just a reflection, a last comment, I also like to say something that other women have said, and Simone de Beauvoir said that you cannot forget that there's enough as a political and economical question for women to be questioned again. Claudia was mentioning that the rights that we have managed to get can also go backwards, and actually it's actually seen that women are going backwards in many countries, and we're also seeing that even in our own country, due to the sanitary problem, many women go back to their homes. Inequality when it comes to fighting the virus, and there are many problems that are actually facing the things that we're actually facing, and we cannot forget actually how we have actually got here. So we cannot stop fighting. There's still a lot to do in many different places, in many different fronts. Indeed. Christina, I'm going to leave you for the last one, even at the beginning. So I'm going to try to talk to you and answer in the chat. I'm sure that you still have a few comments that you want to mention.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I heard right, that there was a question about whether or not the videos had different themes based on where they came from in the world. And I just want to respond to that, because as I was watching these, there's definitely a language barrier on my side, but just watching the images reminded me how universal the experiences are of, gender inequality, gender oppression, gender-based violence. I mean, you don't have to understand what is being said in the dialogues. You can see by, the images or the body language, the discomfort, the unfairness and the injustice of disempowerment. It is universal. You don't have to be able to understand it with your ears, And I think that it's so powerful because it reminds us that even though the manifestation of gender inequality and gender disempowerment can be very different in different parts of the world, the underlying experience is the same. It is one of not being able to fulfill yourself. It's being taken advantage of. It's being invisible. It's being, it's all of these different things that, even though it might appear and be experienced differently around the world, it is a universal, an unfortunate universal experience of oppression. And I just thought that question was so pointed, because it evoked for me a response, because I couldn't understand a lot of the videos, but I could understand, the underlying message. And I think that that's really an important point for all of us to leave with, is just how this is such a universally bad experience, and that it takes a whole social transformation to be able to right that wrong.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias. Qué cuatro mujeres más maravillosas.
Four amazing women. I knew this was going to be an excellent debate, but you have gone above and beyond all my expectations. I'm sure that the audience does too. I feel like organizing more of this kind of debates, because I think that we have left a lot of things unsaid, and that we could be debating these things for a long time. But we have talked the main ones that we actually wanted to discuss. I hope that we will have been able to help women to feel more inspired, more empowered, as it's said now, to take the reins of their own lives, to do what they actually want to do. And this was actually the function, to open the eyes of the importance of the role of women in the fight against climate change, which is very important. It's key, it's essential, because even if you don't believe it, we men do what you women say. This is the fact. This is the first point of empowerment. Even if this sounds strange, no man will accept it, actually. But I want to actually close out. I want to thank the four of you, the team of La Casa Encendida, Manuel, our translator and friend. But I want to thank you all, your opinions. I want to congratulate you for your career, for your path, for the way you think. We need a lot of women and many men that think like you do. Well, this is going to be full of hurdles, but we're a lot the ones that think it's key that women incorporates not 30%, but 50% in this society. Everything that has to give. So I'm going to say goodbye after saying thank you. I have to look down to be able to say you, because my camera is up. So I'm going to thank you with all my love. Look at you in the face, and thank you for being here, and I hope we can do it again. I'm going to finish with a sentence from another woman from today, Greta Thunberg. She says, the only thing that we need more than hope is action. Once you start acting, hope is everywhere. So don't wait any longer. Let's act. Thank you very much. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I see you next time.